Sacred woman I am. With bare feet I walk across the river stones. With water in my blood and the earth in my bones. I tend a fire in my heart so I am never alone. Sacred woman I am.
Hello and welcome to Rite of Passage, breaking the silence around menopause. My name is Michela and today I talked with Lynn Paterson. Lynn is the founder and owner of One Heart Tantra. She's an accomplished and experienced teacher, guide, and practitioner in the field of Tantra, conscious sexuality, and transformation. Lynn was my introduction to the world of Tantra many years ago. Today, Lynn and I talked about Tantra and sexuality through the menopause years. Please listen to this energy exchange as we move with the flow and talk about Tantra, sexuality, spirituality, and life through this rite of passage. Enjoy. Okay. So the first question I want to ask you, obviously, there's a lot of misconception about Tantra and what it is. And even when I talk to people about Tantra, they always go and think about only one thing, it's just sex and that's it, and obviously there is so much more in Tantra. So can you introduce a little bit the viewers to Tantra and you and your work and who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So thanks for asking, Michela, for me to be a part of this. I'm really honored. I think that people do struggle to understand Tantra because it's such a vast body of practices and philosophies. And it has to be noted that, the original Tantra that was practiced in the East, what is practiced in the West, in some regards, bears very little resemblance to what was originally arose in the East all those, centuries ago. So I think it's inevitable when you're in a culture and a society of very repressed and suppressed sexuality that the sexual aspects of Tantra are going to come to the fore, because that is really, part and parcel of what Tantra has to offer and what people are looking for, is this integration between sexuality and spirituality, or you might say between the masculine and the feminine. It's this inner alchemy that leads to an inner marriage that creates the holistic and whole feeling within an individual. And I think that that's what drew me to Tantra in the first place, because I was already doing spiritual practices and working with angels and crystals and meditation. But it got to the stage where I felt like, okay, so I've worked from the heart upwards, and now I really feel like I need to work, from the heart going downwards and really ground this practice. And so along with this sort of yearning I got in my hands to work with people and touch them in a certain way, I did some consultation and research, and I came up with, amongst other things, Tantra massage as a way for me to start to explore my sexuality and also grounding all of the spiritual practices. So I was really looking for integration, although I didn't really know that. So my practice in Tantra back in 2007 in Scotland started out learning with a couple of teachers in Spain on how to practice Tantra massage. And that, along with personal meetings with them, that took about 6 months to get to a stage where I felt comfortable to be able to practice Tantra massage. And since then, it's taken me, the whole Tantra thing has taken me on many, many twists and turns and expansions and concerns and fears and amazing experiences. So I think that whether or not you look at Tantra from the point of view of just sexuality, or whether you look at it from spirituality, or whether you like to look at it from both, what it will eventually do is to come back round on itself and it will introduce you to its opposite. Whichever way you start, you will inevitably end up meeting its opposite.
Yeah.
So I personally don't think it matters all that much as to whether or not you think Tantra is just about sexuality, because if that's what you're facing in yourself, then that's what's needed.
Yeah.
Or if you want it to be very spiritual, then it will be very spiritual for you. But eventually both of those paths will lead you to the opposite. And I think that's the beauty of it. It's inclusive, it doesn't exclude anything.
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
And I called my work One Heart Tantra. And that was the name that came to me, you know, when I set up my practice. And it was an angelic input actually that created that name with me. And I thought that's what it is. And many times over the years, I've thought about missing out or leaving out or avoiding the word Tantra because of its, you know, limitations, but also its connotations and misunderstandings. But again and again and again, the guidance is, no, you're not doing yourself or Tantra any favors if you run away from, you know, misperceptions, you know, in that way. So I've stuck with Tantra, and it's stuck with me.
Yeah. And I remember you telling me the story of the name One Heart Tantra. It came to you from Archangel Gabriel.
Yes, you're right. Good memory. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember. And I still have that conversation in mind. Yeah, no, it was beautiful the way you talked about it and the way, you know, she introduced you to, you know, to this. Yeah, no, I remember. I love that story. Still remember it. And you were my introduction as well to the world of Tantra. I didn't know anything about Tantra because when I met you, I was myself going through a sexual awakening in a way, you know, looking at my sexuality and my Shakti and my womb energy in a different way. And I was doing some womb work at the time. And I remember, I think I met you through Kundalini Reiki first. And then you came to,
yes.
yes, that was the first one. And then you came to Dublin for a series of evenings at the Dublin Center. Yeah. And that was my introduction to Tantra. And I know that, you know, although, you know, Tantra comes and goes from my life, but, you know, it's the energy is always there. It's, you know, it's the way I approach it. It's my way of seeing myself, you know, as sometimes as a sexual being, you know, with that's so much energy, you know, that energy that comes up and needs to be, you know, not only awakened, but acknowledged and channeled, you know, in a positive way, you know. So that's the way it comes out for me sometimes. And also, you know, I think I talked to you about this before. Sometimes, you know, the sexual energy, you know, comes up and you don't realize what it is and can be overwhelming, you know, confusing,
Yes.
you know, what's happening. So, you know, with the work of Tantra, you know, we tend to channel that beautiful energy because it is a beautiful energy, you know, even when I talk about sexuality, sometimes I say to people, you know, remember like the paintings of the statues in the Vatican, in a church, right? About the ecstasy of centuries or the ecstasy of this other saint, you know, that's the energy they felt. It's like, you know, when you commune with an angel, you know, that's, you know, the ecstatic energy that comes up, you know, that's Tantra as well, you know, so, you know,
it
yeah.
is.
You know, and I mean, yeah, I thought it was beautiful. And so about menopause, obviously we're here talking about menopause and life, you know, changes us, menopause changes us. So we go through, you know, this threshold and, you know, with ups and downs, you know, it can, for some women, you know, a few women are lucky and they have very few symptoms. They don't even you know, they don't even realize they're going through perimenopause, and then they are in menopause and everything stops and they're fine. For many women, it's a roller coaster of emotions, of, you know, of breakdowns as well, you know, of releasing lots of things and accept, you know, taking on other things, you know, and it is a tough journey at times. But in saying that, you know, it is a beautiful journey as well. You know, and, you know, that's what I was trying to bring in with these interviews, you know, yeah, we have these tough times, but we also have to remember, oh yes, this is a threshold to become our new self, our new authentic self. You know, you can call it the Empress, the fearless one, the wise one, the crone, it doesn't matter, but it's a passage. And I think Tantra, because we change and our sexuality changes through this period, because sometimes I feel like completely shut down. Like, no, no. You know, and so I think Tantra and, you know, and the practices of sacred sexuality, you know, they can help us a lot through this threshold.
Yes, I'd agree with you. And, you know, having worked with a lot of men as well as a lot of women, worked with older men as well, one of the repeating things is the difficulty that these older gents in their 50s and sometimes in their 40s, but mostly in their 50s, are facing when their partners are going through menopause. It's been made very clear to me that the men are struggling with this as well. So it would be good to talk about, you know, from the masculine point of view as well.
Yeah.
Because men also go through their kind of same hormonal changes as well. And quite often it can be that the man is going through his at the same time as the woman is. And whereas she is getting less female hormones and perhaps becoming, you know, more affected by the testosterone that is naturally in her body, that is no longer being tempered by the female hormones, she can actually become a little bit more masculine. And actually, hormonally, that does appear in a woman's body as well. You know, you might get a little bit more chins on hair on the chins, and you know,
things, yeah.
yeah, you might get a little bit more masculine in that kind of way. Whereas for the man, he's getting less testosterone, and so he might become a little bit more feminine. So he might develop some, you know, man boobs, or get a little bit softer in the body. And that's also emotionally as well. And so what I found was that some of these men who are now starting to yearn for softness and vulnerability and connection through cuddling and actually less sex, sometimes the women are having the opposite effect. They're getting this boost of testosterone, especially if they go on to hormonal replacement therapy.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And they can actually get a mix of hormones, because hormone replacement therapy is not just about replacing the female hormones.
Yeah.
Sometimes the hormone replacement therapy is actually a woman taking testosterone.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we never think about, you know, oh, we women becoming more, you know, male, not male, but you know, becoming, you know, having more that energy because of our hormones, you know. So we always think about ourselves like, you know, I'm the feminine, he is the masculine. So, you know what I mean? It should be the way. Or even like, you know, in a couple where, you know, there are two women as well, and that maybe they are, you know, they're going through the same process at the same time, you know. So maybe they're going to be like too masculine energy, too much of their masculine energy is coming through, you know. Yeah, but we never think about that. Yeah, and I find it very, very interesting. Yeah.
So I think the thing about the menopause is that it can affect us in so many different ways, and it can change from month to month and year to year. So as you say, you know, for some people it can be a roller coaster.
Yeah.
For other people, they don't even notice that that it is happening. But I think where Tantra can help is that it can give you other outlets for your sexuality, your sensuality, your spirituality, your communication, your grief, your honesty, your vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Because this is really what Tantra is you know, the way that I see Tantra now is not that it's in this category on its own, and this is Tantra and this is life. I now cannot see Tantra as different to life. So for me, the word life is synonymous with the word Tantra, because in life, in nature, this spirituality and sexuality, this interchange and exchange of the masculine and feminine is happening continuously. And so a lot of the things that people call mindfulness, for instance, or yoga are actually originally from Tantra.
That is so interesting. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is. So like mindful eating or even mindfulness, all of that, where you are putting your focused attention onto what's going on in a non-judgmental way, that is so tantric.
It is.
You
Yeah.
could have a whole exercise over mindful eating in Tantra, mindful listening, mindful seeing.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
I would definitely say that mindfulness, what's called mindfulness, is very easily accessible and can be seen as part and parcel of the whole tantric thing, and
Yeah.
very helpful for menopause.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And, like as I was saying before, my introduction to Tantra was with you many, many years ago. And then, I moved, in and out of it constantly. I wasn't always on the path.
Yeah.
But the more I go into my grown years, the more I realize, as you said, this Tantra, it's not that just sexuality. It's so big, and when I do my yoga practice, it's Tantra. When I do my breathing pranayama, it's Tantra. Everything, as you said, I understand it in a very different way now. Before, probably I was understanding just a little part of it, but the more I become older,
Yeah.
the more I understand it, or, maybe, I don't know, the energy is talking to me in a different way now, so I can appreciate it even more.
Yes. And you mentioned pranayama there, and I think that this is a really helpful aspect. So I'd recommend that any woman going through menopause to consider breath work exercises, whether it be through yoga or a breath work practitioner or whatever, whatever works for them, is that can be so helpful in understanding and the feelings that are going on in the body. It gives you a very strong foundational practice, as does meditation, yoga, even things like Pilates can be very, very helpful in creating this foundational structure that you can rely on over and over and over again. For that. So as far as like the breath work is concerned in Tantra, the breath work really helps you get into the body.
That's it. Yeah. We need to get into the body, isn't it? Like, we can't just talk about menopause and sexuality and thinking that I'm a spiritual being, but I'm not a human being. So we are spiritual beings, but we're living a human experience, and with that comes, the body.
Yes.
Biology, the anatomy, and everything else. It's just so important. Embodiment's been one of my practices for the last years.
Yes. Well, I would say that Tantra is is the same as saying embodiment.
Yeah.
And really all that Tantra means is to weave.
Yes.
That's what it means. It just means to weave. And you're talking about the masculine and feminine energies, or, in Tantra, they call it the Shakti and the Shiva. And, in carpets, it's the warp and the weft. It is the two threads of energy that run throughout our entire being and our entire existence. So you can't really get away from it. So the whole embodiment practice and using the breath work to get down into the body, and wherever your mind goes, your energy flows. And this is a truth. Is that even a very simple breath work practice where you are just breathing in through your nose and feeling the breath, how far down the body it goes. Is that it to the chest? Is it to the heart, the solar plexus, the diaphragm? What happens when you start to, you could just place your hand, for instance, underneath your crotch, underneath the yoni there, underneath the vulva, by the perineum. And you can just breathe into your hand there. Now that is a very simple meditation, breathwork, tantric exercise. And what it's doing is it's immediately taking you right down into your root at the perineum there and into your genitals.
Yeah, but we need to be as well, that's why so many issues, I think, this is what I think at least, that so many issues we are experiencing with menopause and even through our menstrual cycles, it's because we were so disconnected from our sexual organs.
Yes.
you know, and that disconnection, you know, the body feels it, and the body is telling me, get down here. I want to talk to you. So
Yes.
let's
And honestly, even before menopause, a lot of women have had issues with sexuality. I mean, not just women, a lot of men have had issues with sexuality, but we're just talking about wombs now, aren't we? So I think that going into menopause when you've had sexual issues throughout a lot of your life can be a bit of relief. It's almost like there is this collective belief amongst women that, oh, great, I don't need to bother with that anymore.
That's true. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I can just leave all of the sexual stuff away. I don't need to think about it.
I heard I heard many women saying that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now that there's absolutely, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. I mean, after all, Tantra, its ultimate aim, if you want to call it an aim, its goal, as might be said, is the sublimation of sexual energy. And sublimation means bringing it up from what is very large and gross and obvious to becoming more and more subtle. And in Tantra, that sees it as that energy moving up from the sexual centers up into the upper centers, and it becomes more and more and more refined. And the actual use of that sexual energy, of creative life force energy, is then used in a spiritual way in order to expand the body's energy fields.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so an adept practicing Tantra, strangely to most Western people, would be that actually Tantra moves you away from sexuality as much as it moves you towards it, but it always moves you towards things in the beginning and then allows that natural journey, like a river going down into the sea almost. It then becomes something else. And so actual people who have practiced Tantra to a great degree can be moving away from sexual activity with partners more than people who have not practiced Tantra. And yet people would say the opposite, you know?
Yeah.
They think Tantra is all about sexuality and whatever. Well, it is, but not just quite in the way that you think that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, you know, like in yoga, it's, you know, it's the world of opposites, you know, it's even in yoga, it's the same thing. Obviously, yoga comes from there, you know, so it's the effortless effort, the duality becoming one, you know, and yeah, absolutely. And also feel like, you know, a lot of women had issues with sexuality, you know, because especially women that were growing up, you know, when they were young, they were growing up in countries like Ireland, for example, or Italy, very Catholic countries, you know, where sexuality and menstrual cycles are all a taboo. And I mean, even recently for myself, some years ago, I was in hospital having surgery, and, you know, and the nurse was asking me if I had my period before the surgery, right? But she was whispering. And I didn't understand why she was whispering, you know, yeah, no, I don't have my period, I'm fine. But, you know, but she was whispering, you know, and I felt, you know, there is so much taboo still about the menstrual cycle and all our cycles, you know, in a woman's life. But in saying that, I also feel that it's never too late. If you're going to menopause or you're post-menopause, you want to learn about Tantra and you want to reconnect with your body, you can start at any time, really.
Yes, I agree. And I also think there's an opportunity in places like Ireland where there has been so much repression over and suppression over sexuality for both men and women. I think that because that has been quite strong in Ireland, then the opportunities to grow through changing that are much greater
Yeah.
than in places where it's a little bit more open about sexuality, because the potential for growth is so much greater. And as a collective as well, because you cannot take yourself out of a collective, whether or not you've been born there or whether you've moved into it. There is a resonance that goes on. There's a pattern that we're all playing into. And you can't take yourself out of the soup when you're part of the ingredient in the soup bowl, you know?
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely. And I know myself because, you know, I was born in Italy, so Catholic country. Now I have to say, then I moved to Ireland, Catholic country. Now, different, we did two different countries, two different aspects of the Catholic life. I think Ireland is more Catholic than Italy, to be honest.
I'd agree.
Very strange because we have the Vatican and everything else, but probably that's why we are trying to move away from it. I don't know. But yeah, it's just, I moved from one Catholic country to another, and I see the similarities, the differences, but also the similarities and how much is needed. But because, as you say, it's so needed here. I mean, people are actually willing to learn and practice because they need that, and the body knows, their heart and their womb, they know, and the body knows that they need that, and even if you were born in the most Catholic country and the most repressed country, and you wanna understand what your body is telling you.
Yes, I think also, the from having lived in Ireland and worked in Ireland, for 6 years or so, I would say that the opportunities in somewhere like Ireland, because it is a very Catholic country, and the way that the Catholics are in connection with the female aspects of divinity, is actually really helpful if somebody can let go of what they think that these feminine aspects of divinity are representing, and whether or not it fits into their own personal belief system, that these feminine faces, of the divine, and some of the pagan understandings of the goddesses, they can be incredibly helpful for a woman going through her life, just because the woman's life is all about sexuality. I mean, right from the moment you are born through a woman's sexual organs. Everything must come to pass through the woman, or the feminine life force. Through that, and all things must, pass through that mystical gate. The feminine icons in America, like the Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary, the female saint, Mary Magdalene, the pagan goddesses like Bridget, the triple goddess of Bridget, they're coming up to her time of year now. These can be very, very helpful, connecting with the land and island. Extremely helpful, connecting with nature, connecting with the waters. These are the feminine expressions, the matter, the material, the mother. And if people are open to asking, then we certainly have a greater chance of getting in the wisdom and help from these, I suppose, archetypes, which are alive in us all, whichever. It doesn't matter what religion you are.
Yeah, no, it's true. I was some years ago, I was in a circle of women, and I was leading a circle of women, and we were doing some womb practices, and we talked about Mother Mary, and she came through, and and we talked about our womb and our energy and our sexuality through her energy, and her energy was very strong. So and I think it was perfect because these women know Mother Mary, they grew up. I grew up with her. I remember growing up with my grandmother telling me the story of Mother Mary, praying to Mother Mary, and having the little picture of, we would call it a Madonnina, the little Madonna. So it's close to me, and it's close to them here in Ireland as well. And I think that was perfect because, sometimes we think about sexuality and Tantra, and we think about the Eastern divinities, which are beautiful as well. But why not connecting with something or someone close to our nature, because we were born here, we live here. So Mother Mary is the perfect example. Mary Magdalene as well, to an extent, which is in the back here. But Mother Mary, and I've been working with her for the last few years, and I think I told you that. And I didn't know why she was coming through, and I now know why, because I'm on this threshold of perimenopause. And that's, and Mother Mary is the threshold for me, as you were saying, I think as well. And then, after the threshold in the menopause, I finally feel like I'm experiencing Mary Magdalene, for example, through her menopause years and my menopause years. That's the way.
Yes, exactly. I mean, then it doesn't really matter where the Christian practices came from or whether people believe that they overlaid the pagan, the goddesses and whatever. What you're looking at here is patterns and archetypes and things like that. And there is no doubt at all that within the Christian traditional, from the Gnostic and from the, you know, the Magdalene tradition and the Mother Mary tradition and the Black Madonna or the Virgin Noir, there is a tantric tradition that is coming through, and so you might call that a priestess tradition of sexuality and spirituality, for instance. And so there were practices, alchemical practices that they would use, which are very, very similar to tantric practices coming from the East. But also there's Taoist practices that come from, you know, China, originally, and have somewhat been incorporated into other countries as well. And the Taoist practices, although mainly are known for the masculine, there is a good tradition of feminine Taoist practices. The jade egg being one of them. And the jade egg, you know, is like a yoni egg, and that would be a very good way in Tantra, in Taoist practices, of a woman getting in touch with her womb and her yoni. And you know, there's a crossover as well, isn't there? Because you can look at the jade egg, the practices of that for the feminine Taoists, but also, you know, like Mary Magdalene, linking that over. Mary Magdalene is quite often depicted holding an egg. You know, so what you're looking at here are patterns that, you know, are available for us to work with. So I don't think that we need to get worried about where our interests are taking us. The important thing is to follow what interests you have, because if we're menopause, definitely getting in touch with your intuition and following what is you are interested in is key to navigating these menopausal times. Is key. So just briefly on the Taoist, there's a very good tradition in Ireland of feminine sexual alchemy, for instance, based in Dublin, and working with somebody who can help with exercises in the Taoist way can be incredibly helpful for women going through menopause. So for example, and I don't say this because I'm saying what's good or what's bad, I'm just saying two different experiences here that I'm going to share with you. And people are going to automatically think, well, one's much better than the other. And yet that is not what I'm saying here. Okay, so having been interested in complementary and alternative health for many years and spiritual things, and actually turning my back on allopathic traditional Western medicine, I found myself in a position at 52 of being offered an elective hysterectomy. And I was totally surprised that I found my body saying, yes, this is what I want. And so I went ahead and I elected to have this hysterectomy, and they wanted to give me a total hysterectomy, and I said, well, okay, I want to keep my cervix. I didn't know why, but I just said I want to keep the cervix. And because my mother had died of ovarian cancer, this is one of the reasons that they gave. And one of my ovaries was fairly well dried up anyway by that stage. So I went ahead and I had that, and it was because I had fibroids.
All right.
Fibroids were embedded in the womb wall, so it wasn't possible to have removed those fibroids at any earlier stage, because I did know they were there from about age 35, or even a little bit younger. And also keyhole surgery wasn't possible because of the size of the fibroids. So I had a total hysterectomy. And, you know, they didn't tell me, they did not give me any information at all on how that would affect me. Apart from they said, you will go into surgical menopause. But there was no offer of you know, any other assistance, or they didn't even mention HRT. If I'd wanted HRT, I would have had to go and ask for it. I'd have had to know about it and what was available. I didn't even know that the scar or the cutting would create numbness in my flesh.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't think about it because I'd never been in hospital. I was a complete newbie to hospital. So I didn't think about, oh yeah, they're going to cut through the nerves and they may not repair again. I didn't even think about it, you know. So I'm still glad that I went through that. But in contrast, another tantric practitioner told me that she started to practice this Taoist exercise, which she didn't even know was a Taoist exercise because she hadn't looked at Taoism at all. And I believe it's called the deer exercise for women.
Okay.
Where she practiced this, just this exercise on its own, which isn't recommended. It's supposed to be part of a whole array of different exercises. And she had fibroids. And she reduced her fibroids through doing this exercise. Went back to her doctor some 6-9 months later, and the doctor says, well, you don't need a hysterectomy anymore because you've shrunk these fibroids. It must be because you're going into the menopause, and menopause shrinks fibroids anyway. Well, it can do, I understand, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
And she sailed through menopause just by practicing this little 2 or 3 minute exercise a day. So if you compare her experience with my experience, you'd say, well, you know, she made the wiser choice there. However, I still feel, and I have done many times over, that my path was my path, and it was there. It was the right one for me.
Yeah, the wise choice is the choice that is right for you at that specific moment. It doesn't mean that because someone is doing something, it's good for you. You know, yeah, you're gonna have to move through your own energy and listen to your body and energy and understand what's the right path for you. And for many women, for some women, it's this and that, and you know, A, B, C, D, different paths, different women, different stories. So we cannot just have one cure for all, because obviously they're very different.
That is so important, Michela, is that you listen and you know what's available out there, and you follow what your interest is, because that sense of fascination and what your interest is your intuition talking to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like, you know, I've been on a spiritual journey for many years. I'm very, you know, holistic orientated. So, you know, for me, it's, you know, all about the natural world. And, you know, I use natural things all the times, even like in everyday things, in my small rituals. My shower gel is 100% natural, you know, all these little things, you know what I mean? But then when it came to perimenopause, you know, I looked around and I felt into my body. And one day I said, okay, I'm going to talk to my GP and I want to hear as well about hormone replacement therapy.
Yes.
Because I don't know anything about it, you know. And I talked to another gynecologist who was that I interviewed as well, and you're gonna see her interview. It's the first one. So we talked about different things, you know. I analyzed the pro and con of every
fantastic.
I found, you know. But then in the end, you know, there's so much out there. There's so much. I mean, I was getting overwhelmed with the information. I said, okay, I'm gonna listen to my body at this moment. What do I need to understand what's going on? And you know. And the body simply said, you know, just take HRT for this time, you know, and then, you know, and then explore, you know, and this is what I'm doing. So I'm taking hormone replacement therapy at the moment, and not ashamed to say that, because at the moment it's what my body needs. But I am also exploring, for example, Ayurveda, and you know, I'm going to start with a routine, Ayurvedic routine next week. And so, you know, and see what happens, you know, and even maybe later on explore traditional Chinese medicine, because it helped me before. But I really have to listen to my body. And there's no shame, you know, even if I went natural all these years, you know, but this time my body's telling me, okay, just go on hormone replacement therapy for a while.
I think you brought up a very good point there, because, and it's something that Tantra can definitely help with, and that is shame.
Yeah.
Because shame doesn't just show up around sexuality, it shows up throughout. I mean, it's really what shame is just a shame about being
Yeah.
who I am.
Yeah.
It's not about what I've done or what I haven't done. That's guilt. But shame is just connected with actual being.
Yeah.
And if you are, I mean, it can be just shame over sexuality, but that is going to show up in all sorts of different ways. So somebody going for hormone replacement therapy who thinks that they shouldn't go for hormone replacement therapy or shouldn't go for hysterectomy is going to feel shame.
Yeah.
And it's not, you would never think, oh, that's to do with sexuality, but sexuality is the very root of our being. It's how we came into the world. And so all shame is about being human, being physical,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And if you've got shame, then you're not going to make the best decisions for yourself, because it's all going to be skewed and filtered through that foundation. So I think in that regard, sexuality, sacred sexuality practice, sensuality practices around with Tantra can be incredibly helpful. And women can access that by going to a teacher, working online, buying a course, going to workshops, reading a book. There's so many ways in which they can, you know, start to work with that. And with yoni practices as well, not just the jade egg practices. There are yoni practices and self-care practices, from even just choosing the nicest, most organic, sweetest smelling shower gel, or nice bath oil that you use, creating these self-care practices around your body, and just exercising.
Yes.
Well, exercising, dance can really help a lot for women's sensuality and tantric practices. That can really, really help a lot. Whether you go in to do some tango or, you know, 5 rhythms or ecstatic dance or beer dancer or, you know, ballroom dancing, salsa, whatever, or you just practice on your own or go to a local near class. That can help tremendously. And so Tantra is really all about breath, sound, and movement. And so on the sound thing, it can be very helpful when using breathwork practices to use sounding practices as well.
Yeah, and even for myself, like I see it in myself, you know, I'm not just saying this generally, this is something, you know, I embody almost every day. It's like, you know, even when I'm home and in the morning I wake up and I clean my home before I do everything else, you know, it's just my ritual. I want to have my home is my temple, and I want to have proper energy in my temple as well. So while I clean, you know, I sing and I dance while I clean my home. But it's a very tantric practice, you know.
It's very tantric.
You know, it's amazing. It's amazing. And it helps me so much, especially when I'm going through, you know, the ups and downs, you know, the hormones are going like this, my mood is going like this, basically, you know, it's just, this is what happens. And just putting on some music that I like, could be tribal music that was singing in circle, or could be something funny from my childhood, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's just, I have a very mixed list, you know, with things that I just, you know, the random search, and then it comes up on its own, and the song, and, you know, I just sing and dance while I'm cleaning. And that helps me stay connected with my body, because when I go through the symptoms, I feel the tendency to move out away from my body because it's painful. And so by doing this, I go back inside, okay, and I listen, you know, and even with the pain, just listening to the pain and sometimes feeling the grief. I'm not a mother. I've never been, you know, I decided not to be.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I realized when I went through the menopause, because it happened immediately. So, I mean, one day I had all of the hormones that I had, and then surgery, and then the day later, so 2 days later, I was without any of these hormones. So I became instantly aware overnight of how powerful those little hormones were. And what I didn't have anymore was the desire to be attractive to the, you know, anymore. And that's smoothed out over the years, I have to say. But that just shows you the power of these little programs that we call hormones, that are huge, really.
They are.
So the grief thing, I kind of was prepared for that, because a friend, who works with esoteric and energetic practices did tell me that didn't really matter whether I'd wanted children or not. This whole collective grief thing about women no longer being able to bear children, or having not born children, being barren, for instance, all of that comes up, and it really did come up, and I didn't take it personally, but I did let it move through me. And I mean, there was a lot of crying, a lot of wailing, a lot of, as I say, sounding,
Yeah.
using the breath, keening.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is, these sort of things are needed.
Yeah.
Going out into the woods and grabbing a rotten stick and whacking it against the ground.
Yes.
Did that. I cried and screamed out loud when I was just driving along, and all of a sudden these waves of grief and emotion would come over me.
Yeah, it's grief coming up, because obviously, even if we had made the choice, okay, I'm not going to be a mother in this life, I don't feel I want to do that in this life. And I've chosen that consciously. So, it's not that it was something like this. I don't know, maybe yes, maybe no, consciously chose, no, I'm not going to be a mother. And then this happened. And then I realized, okay, even when I chose, there was always that tiny little window of possibility that, I could be a mom, and then woof, gone. And then brings so much grief. And I didn't realize that until it happened. And then with the grief, there's so much vulnerability that comes up. So in my sexual relationship, with my husband, that comes up, and I don't want to have penetration. I just want to cuddle and be hugged. You know what I mean? And make love in a completely different way,
And I don't see why women and men shouldn't, be open to that. And I think a lot of it is fear, because this is the way we've always done it. And also a lot of people are probably already thinking, actually, we're not doing sex very well, and everybody else is having better sex anyway. And also you get into a habit and into a rut, no pun intended, on that. You just do sex this way, and it can be very scary moving out of that normal thing into something new. And going into tantric practices, for instance, can give you that opportunity to try different things, to make a different way of connecting with each other, different way of communicating, different way of being vulnerable and trusting with each other. And when you're working as a couple with a teacher or in a group, then you don't feel so alone and so silly when you're doing those practices. So if you're working as a couple, then definitely workshops, working with a teacher, even if that is online, is better than trying to do it yourself at home. Trying to do it yourself at home doesn't really work so well with couples, as it does, for an individual. But through the tantric practices, you can learn how to make love in a different way. And I mean, here's one way, for instance, that in the morning, when a man might naturally have an erection, and maybe the woman doesn't feel like having sex, maybe her, vagina is drying up a bit, sex is a little bit sore, all the rest of it like that. Well, morning sex could be a meditation. If there is, cuddling and touching, and done in a tantric way without expectation, without needing to lead to anywhere. And it could be that, the man's penis finds its way inside the woman's yoni into her vagina. It could be, but that doesn't mean then that there needs to be a lot of friction.
Yes.
It could be that you find yourself in a position, maybe the woman's on her back, maybe the man's on his side, and the legs are scissored together. And if the man is inside the woman, then maybe they can just lay there.
Yes. Yeah.
And lay there and then see what arises.
I like that. I like penetration without no friction. You know what I mean? Just be there,
And see what arises in that moment. I mean, it could be that the man's penis goes soft. It could be that it goes hard again. He could have some little tweaks that go through. The woman's vulva may fold around, may hold his penis, and she may find that her vulva has a life of its own.
Yeah.
the yoni starts to have movement.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that everything is just happening on its own without any need to do anything. So it's like, take away the expectation, take away the idea it has to look like this, take away the action, be patient. Just
Yeah.
leave it for a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, no shame, no blame. Just leave the penis inside the yoni for
Yeah. It's
just
true.
see what happens. Just
Totally.
lay there and use your breath work.
Yeah, breathing there, like, you know, looking in each other's eyes, it's just being there. Oh, it's just one of the most tantric perfection thing. It's like, you know, because sometimes, you know, especially nowadays, you know, with lots of movies, you know, coming, you know, in our mind, you know, we see this perfect sexual life, you know, in movies, which is never, it's never like in movies. In movies, it's a fiction. It doesn't happen the way, you know.
Oh.
Like sometimes you have to help the man, you know, you go inside, you know what I mean? It's just, it's ridiculous. We have this idea of perfection that comes from Hollywood.
Yes.
Not that.
And it's not like that. It's not like that at all. And I think one of the things that upsets couples, and people are all, you have to be honest with yourself as well as your partner.
Yeah.
If you've got a partner, you have to be honest with yourself. And that is that quite often we're looking for excuses not to do something as well, or we're looking for excuses for it to not to work.
Yeah.
So for instance, one of the things that I noticed with myself was that when I had a partner, in making love, something would happen that would spoil the mood. Whether it be the doorbell or a thought came in or anything like that, and it would spoil the mood, and all of a sudden, you know, the energy would just go down like that. And I think, oh, well, that's it spoiled. It wasn't, you know, no point in going any further. And what I realized was how inflexible is that attitude. And then I thought to myself, do you know, if the energy can be that high and that beautiful, and then all of a sudden it goes down like that, just because a thought comes into my mind or the doorbell rings, then surely it could work the other way as well.
Yes.
So I think this is like tantric mindfulness, is that if the energy does go down like that, it's like, well, you know, get over it, let it go. Don't focus on it. You're only going to make it worse. Let it go. Use this focused pranayama breath work. Use the exercises that you might just have learned in Pilates.
Yeah.
You know, and just allow that energy just to work its way back up again. Just to be accepting of what is actually happening in the moment, but not fixated on it staying like that.
Yeah.
And I think patience is necessary for that, and allowing spaciousness. Because if you rush in and you try to change things without actually accepting what is actually happening in the moment, then you've missed an opportunity for growth, and you probably aren't going to have a good experience anyway.
Yeah, that's true. So true. I agree, 100%.
So spaciousness is very important, and patience. And obviously, you know, you were talking about communication with your partner. There are different ways of communicating, and some of it can be with the penis inside the vulva. And other times it can be, you know, looking into each other's eyes and allowing the space for your emotions to be expressed. Without needing to get into trying to fix somebody or trying to fix what the situation is.
We can't fix anything if we don't fix if we don't look at ourselves, we can't fix anything anyway. So it's just no point doing that, really.
And I mean, these are actually quite advanced practices that we're talking about here, as if they were easy, as if they were nothing, and it's not true. They are difficult practices, and they take commitment, and it's why I say with couples it can be, you know, most helpful working with a teacher or going on workshops.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about these things because obviously we experience these things. But if, you know, people that are watching this are new to Tantra and sexuality and they want to learn, there's always, I mean, they can start at any time. There's no limit here. And just find a teacher that, you know, that can work with you or work with you and your partner, you know, and just help you move through.
Yes.
That they're moving through, you know, and I mean, there's no limit to when we can start, you know, until we live, we can start.
Exactly. As long as you're still alive. as long as you're still alive, and even if you're on medication, even if, for instance, you know, that the man can't get an erection anymore, or the woman can't have sex anymore, tantric practices and alternative practices can be incredibly helpful and fulfilling.
They are.
Because one of the great things about Tantra is that it really does focus on pleasure, not pleasure for pleasure's sake, but allowing the whole concept and idea and feelings of pleasure to teach you, really.
Yes,
To
absolutely.
teach you. And that is a fantastic antidote to shame.
Yeah, we forget about pleasure. We don't want to talk about pleasure. Some people don't want, want to talk about it, but some people don't like to talk about pleasure as if it's a thing that makes them feel guilty, you know?
Yeah.
Like, why it's pleasure? I mean, you're living, you're a human being, so let's be open to pleasure as well.
Yes, and after all, you know, people will seek pleasure even if they don't admit it. And, you know, that bar of chocolate or those new shoes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, being honest about your needs and the pleasure and the fact that we live in a touch deprived society as well. So in like Tantra massage, for instance, learning Tantra massage can really help an individual or a couple. Receiving Tantra massage can really help an individual, or, you know, couples practicing Tantra massage or something like Tantra massage together can really take off the expectations and the emphasis of frictional intercourse, sex, penetration, and can move towards expanding our capacity to receive pleasure in new and absolutely gorgeous, delicious ways.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And touch, you said about touch. Touch is so important. We don't touch ourselves enough. Even our face. Touch your face. Touch your boobs. Just touch. I mean, this is so important that just even touch here. Oh my God, it's so important that touch your body, feel your body constantly. I think it's one of the most important for me.
Very, very reassuring. Absolutely, very reassuring. And you know, the hands are coming straight from the heart down like that. So it, you know, yes, exactly. Touch yourself. These are self-care practices. Touch yourself, hug yourself, give yourself a kiss. You know, develop that sort of nice, cozy, yummy.
You know, exactly.
For yourself.
Just there are some days I just want to be like, yes. I
want to. And also, you know, like yoni touch. Practices for self-care for yoni as well. I mean, it's a, you know, if we've got discomfort during sexual intercourse, it could be that there are things that can help a woman with that, but it can also be getting in touch with your yoni, making friends with her, listening to her, practicing self-touch, you know, can be incredibly helpful. So going through the menopause for me, I had what's known as Kundalini come up after my operation. I'd had Kundalini before, but I had Kundalini that had come up during the operation to help with the healing. So, you know, tantric practices, Kundalini work can often help with medical problems as well as, you know, emotional ones, can help heal the body. But there were times when I couldn't even feel like I was having an orgasm. It had just like completely disappeared. And I thought, oh my goodness, am I never going to be able to have a really good orgasm again? Even through masturbation, it was like tiny in comparison to, you know, orgasms that I'd had before. But that changed. That changed, and doing, you know, the womb work, working with the yoni, working with breath work and embodiment, spending a lot of time in nature, it all helped. Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, spending time in nature, that's so important as well, because, you know, I can't emphasize how beneficial that is in all respects for life. I can't imagine what it is. We're so connected to the earth, you know. Our body is the earth. You know, it's just, you know, we're so especially for women. So there's no way around it. We have to commune with nature, and in the cycles of nature, you can see the cycles of our life as well. Not just the menstrual cycle, but all the cycles of our life. Ireland is such a matriarchal society,
Yeah.
and it's still very much alive in the land there.
Yeah.
So women being on the land is a fantastic opportunity for women in Ireland.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was, yeah, absolutely not. Yeah. And I was in West Cork recently, like it was last November, and completely different energy from where I'm living because I am close to Dublin. So the energy, it's lovely. It's south. It's not the city. So it's south on the coast, and it's
Yeah.
lovely and it's beautiful. But then I went west, very west, West Cork, and which is far away from everything really. And nature is different, the coast is different, and the land is different, and there is much shamanic female energy. I can't quite put it.
Yes, I would say for women who want to get in touch with the feminine land in Ireland, I would head to Cork, West Cork, and County Kerry.
Yeah, and Kerry as well. When I was in Kerry, was the same. Yeah, these are the two parts of Ireland where I feel like that energy is very much alive. And you walk, you can take off your shoes and start walking on the ground, and you can feel actually
So
the
it's not a surprise that the dairy in West Cork and County Kerry is such a strong thing, you know. Sexuality runs through life, you know. You've got the mother's milk, you've got that whole dairy thing going on in West Cork and County Kerry, and that is evidence of a very, very strong feminine influence. I call it the garden, that part.
Oh, it is. And even the water there, the water is different. It's completely different. And I don't know, it's I can put it into words, but it is very, very different. And it was when I was in West Cork, I was going through my own thing. I was going through a shamanic experience. But, you know, when I was there in West Cork, when I felt my blood, and I was menstruating at the time, my blood was the water of the world. It's just, it was so connected. And I experienced it there when I was in West Cork. So that's why that land for me is.
Yeah, and I mean, blood carries our consciousness. And that's actually something to bear in mind, that when you stop bleeding, you do need other expressions of releasing emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Because on a monthly basis, when you're releasing the blood, it could be said in some regards that this is energy that is leaving your body. And blood holds the consciousness and the wisdom, so you are losing that every month, but it's also a purging and a cleansing. And when that doesn't happen anymore, there needs to be some other ways in which we work with releasing the rage, the emotions, the grief.
This is a funny way, probably, I don't know, and this I learned some months back of last year when I was doing another retreat. And basically, instead of you going to the bathroom, I was peeing on the land.
Yes, great.
And then I thought, oh my God, and at the beginning I felt like, I hope Mother Earth is happy. And then the lady that was with me said to me, you know, Mother Earth is very happy when we pee on the land.
Yeah. I had my first Tantra temple as in a little wooden cabin in the back of a long garden before I moved to Ireland. And I was worried because my clients did not have access to a toilet there. It was just in the house, which was, you know, a minute's walk away. But they couldn't be more pleased. If they needed to pee, they went outside and they peed outside, and they loved it.
Yes.
They loved it.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It was, you know, I mean, I used to do that when I was a kid, you know, when we were going out, you know, my mom or my dad, they would bring me to the countryside because my grandparents had farms. So I would be around playing around, and you know, when I needed to go, I needed to go. So I was peeing wherever. But that was it, you know. So then, you know, last year, you know, I was feeling like, okay, I have to pee, and you know, the lady was saying, just pee on the ground, wherever. Let's go.
It's really sad. As anybody who walks around the hills and goes for hikes and all the rest of it, peeing on the land is just a natural expression of being in a human body.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's our water, and it's only human beings who ever think of anything as waste. Nature doesn't actually have a concept of waste at all.
Yeah.
So even doing something like peeing on the land can completely rewire your brain, especially if you're the type of person who's worried about that or feels ashamed or, you know, dirty or whatever. It's like, yeah, we have to get over, we can get over ourselves, we can get over all of that sort of thing, and we can change so much our whole attitudes.
And you can imagine, like, I wasn't alone, 23 women, peeing outside, wherever, this was a huge, huge piece of land, like amazing, like surrounded by the olive trees and on the hills in Spain, So all of your shame was kind of like going, because if you had to pee, you had to pee.
Yeah, yeah, it's just sensible, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's just
liberating.
sensible. So I think that the land for women in Ireland, going down to West Cork and Kerry, as I said, I call that the garden, and it can put you in touch with, you call it in a shamanic way. I also think it's shamanic, and I'd call it an ancient way. I'd call it prehistory. I'd call it from the beginning of the conception of the earth.
Yeah.
That energy has been woven into County Kerry and County Cork.
Yeah.
And you will get in touch with mystical aspects of yourself there, and the ancestral stuff that runs through us all as women.
Yeah.
So I told you that my mother died of ovarian cancer, and that I had a hysterectomy. And so I'd like to share just a story about what happened when my mother was dying. We never really had a conversation about spirituality or anything like that. She was very nature-based, but a woman before her time, didn't really feel like she fitted in to the world, or the world was there for her. So she was about 72 or 73, and by this stage she was getting ready to be moved into a hospice. It was very close to the end. I found myself alone with her in our hospital room, and the other visitors had disappeared off. And my mother was on a fair amount of morphine at that time. But all of a sudden, she just came out of the morphine haze, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm so sorry." And she just said, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And I said, "What is it, Mum? What are you sorry about?" And she started crying. And I said, "What is it?" She said, "I'm so sorry that I didn't manage to heal the ancestral womb stuff." And I thought, oh
wow.
What's happening here? What is happening here? And so I went over and I just sat by her, held her hand, and I said, "Tell me." And she said, "Well, there's supposed to be 3 of us who agreed to come through." And, I'd never heard my mother talk anything like this. I mean, I was into this sort of stuff, but I had no idea. So where it was coming from must have been her higher self or whatever. And the morphine was allowing it through. And she said, "But one of them died and the other one didn't do the work. And I couldn't do it all for myself. I couldn't do it all for us all. And now I've left it all with you." And I said, "Well, that's okay. I can do it." Because I really truly believed that I could do it. And I said, "No, don't worry about it. I'll do it." And she started singing, "I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry." And she went back into the morphine haze again after that. But I did feel like, okay, she'd passed that information to me, and that I can work with it. And maybe my 2 sisters can work with it in their own way, if not openly in the same way as I did. Well, at that same time, I'd met a new partner, and this whole Tantra thing had awoken up in me, and this Kundalini thing had reawoken in me after a couple of years of my first Kundalini experience. And it was very close to getting together with this new partner in my life to my mother passing. It was very, very close. And when I went over to see him, he was in the Pacific Northwest of America, and I was looking for my wedding dress, and my mother had passed by then, looking for my wedding dress. It was only 2 weeks after she'd passed. And I realized I had what I thought was cystitis. And I had not had cystitis for many a year. I got cystitis quite badly. In fact, I got a urinary tract infection, quite nasty. And I ended up having to be on painkillers and antibiotics, which was not obviously my choice, as I'm sure you can appreciate. And when I was working with that, and of course I blessed the antibiotics as well. And I said, I'm going to include all of this. This is, I'm not going to exclude this Western stuff. So I included all of the antibiotics and the blessing and the ancestral stuff. And I went back 14, 15, 16 generations of females in my family line. And I started working more actively with the womb stuff. And although it did take a while for that urinary tract infection to pop up, it was not a coincidence that it popped up after my mum had just done that. I was getting together with a new partner. All my sexual stuff was coming up again. All the times I'd had thrush when I was a younger woman, which was very frequently, and I'd always get that after sexual encounters where my whole heart was not in it. And so at that point in my life, it was about 42 then, I started really honoring. Really honoring. And although I still went for the hysterectomy, the fibroids were for me the collected energy that I hadn't been able to process mentally and emotionally, that I had collected over the years. And the times when I said yes, when I meant no, and the times when I said no, and really I wanted to say yes, and the shame over having a female body and over being sexually active and enjoying pleasure and all the rest. That's what I think all of the fibroids is. And of course, when a man, enters a woman and ejaculates inside, there is an energy transfer.
Oh my gosh, big one.
And so, like the Taoist work, the Tantra work, the esoteric work, the womb work, the feminine work, all of that can help. Understanding what is happening energetically when we are taking stuff into our womb.
Yes, because we don't realize when we are young what we are doing. I didn't at all. I was enjoying sex because I was, something I enjoyed, but it was it, and then learning that, when you meet someone, then you have a sexual relationship and, this penetration and intercourse and ejaculation, and you're taking in that sperm, even if you don't become pregnant, that doesn't really matter. That's an energy you are releasing that he's releasing from himself and you're taking in. And if you don't know how to work with your womb energy, what's going to happen?
Yes, and hundreds of years ago, not in the history that is really talked about, thousands of years ago, there were sexual priestesses who were trained in this alchemy. And so when men came back from war, they would go into these temples and they would call them prostitutes, but in actual fact, they were high priestesses of sexual energy and alchemy. And they would know how to transmute this, what people might call negative energy, and what I just call, a buildup of emotions and thoughts.
It's our womb, it's well, some people call it the sacred graal. So, it's the chalice, so the sacred chalice, so the cauldron, and it is like a bowl. So it takes in stuff.
It does.
It's the way we are designed. So it's not a bad thing. It is a good thing. But, we need to learn how to, first embody, be embodied, and then appreciate and honor ourselves, really honor ourselves and our energy, and learn how to work with these energies, because obviously these are energies that are coming in.
So when a woman goes through menopause and she stops bleeding, that womb continues to take in, but it doesn't put out in the same way. So it's not putting out physical blood anymore or a physical baby. So really, what the goddess would say is that all things must pass through me. They come into the physical world and they go out of the physical world through the mystical womb. But when, for a woman going through menopause, getting in touch with her intuition, getting in touch with her heart energy, her sacred sexuality, getting in touch with the earth, being able to express her emotions healthily, really, really important for her because she's not bleeding on a monthly basis anymore. And so
and
that's
exactly.
done in a different way.
And this is what I'm learning myself. I'm relearning how to honor myself when when I want to share something and I want to be listened to. This is how I'm feeling now. This is what I need now. I don't want this now. I want this. I want the opposite. So moving through communication while I'm moving through.
Yes, communication, which is an ongoing thing. It's not a one-off, is it? Communication. It requires commitment to yourself, and it requires commitment to, to the relationships that you're in, whether that be with, your primary partner or your friendships or, your place of work, whatever. Communication is absolutely paramount.
It is. Oh, absolutely. And just the one thing that you say, the honor yourself, it's so important. Sometimes because we're women and we tend to take on everything from the entire world, we stop honoring ourselves. But when we do that, we cannot take on anything. Really, we can't help anyone else if we can't honor or help ourselves. And there's there's an interesting thing actually about bleeding as well and the menstrual cycle, because with the times throughout the centuries, it kind of became like a taboo. So we couldn't talk about the menstrual cycle. So if a woman was bleeding, in Italy, at least where I'm from, like women would have different names to call the menstrual cycle. It was so funny because why don't you call it menstrual cycle? I have my periods, but they would call it different weird names. This thing has arrived. It was funny, but because it's a taboo and we kind of we're using pads and stuff to protect ourselves, obviously, because there is a lot of blood coming through us, but that kind of disconnected us with our true nature as well. So what happened when we stopped bleeding on the earth? And there was not only something that was helpful to us, but was helpful in general for the world.
Yes.
There is a saying, I think, I'm not sure about the whole saying, but I think in the shamanic practices, there is a saying that goes like, when women will start bleeding on the earth again, then all wars will stop, and peace will come again to earth, so, it's just, because if the blood doesn't go into the earth, the blood, earth needs blood, and not in a negative way, in a positive way, So the wars that are happening now in the world, they're happening because, for many, many reasons, obviously.
So yes, we can be conscious about the cycles. And also the thing about blood is that the iron in the blood is what creates metaphysically the possibility of a physical incarnation.
Yeah.
So it's the iron in the blood that is the sort of link between spirituality and having a physical body. It's the iron. And so that connection between women and the earth there. And I think that there are stories of, like in the Pacific Northwest of America, there's this island off Seattle called Bainbridge Island. And it used to be where the Native American Indians would send their women to go and have their period and go and have the children and go through the women's rights. And that's been taken these days as, let's get rid of the women, they're having their period, it's dirty. No, what it was for was because they were honoring the process. And women think these days that they don't know what honoring the process is. They think that I should be horse riding, I should be swimming, I should be going to work, I should do all that. They don't realize that what they're trying to do is just to be like men.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of taking a couple of days off or looking after yourself when you have your period or just being okay with what's going on with it without having to be this man. They think that, period's not going to stop me, it's not going to get in the way of my life, whereas the period is life.
It is. And the thing is,
it's called a period for a reason. It's called a period, like a full stop is called a period because the nature is saying to you, actually, you could just slow down.
Yeah.
There's a moment you could just take yourself off and honor this process, and that could include allowing your blood to go directly onto the land.
And it's so true, just take a step back, and I'm experiencing this now, actually now in these days, because as you know, I I've been going through something, and a friend of mine yesterday, she just pulled an angelic card for me, and it was take a step back. Like, and sometimes, I know I'm guilty of that, of keep going and going and going because I have to do this, I want to do that, and I feel like I'm wasting my time. So it's like my ego energy going, you have to do more, you're not doing enough. And then, when what happens, and, you're going to go, okay, I have to take a step back and I have to stop. And there's no shame or guilt in taking a day off or 2 days off or even 3 days off. And if I want a week off, and just gather my energy and feel embodied again, because
give yourself the opportunity of spaciousness, because when you move through the menopause, you can then start to be in the world in a different way. You can actually end up being able to give more when you've gone through the menopause, if you have allowed yourself to give to yourself and to withdraw from the world a little bit. You can then re-emerge, rebirth yourself in a different way.
Yeah.
And you might find you're actually giving more and doing more than you were before.
Yeah.
Just in a different way.
Different way, exactly. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Oh, wow. So thank you so much. One last thing I want to ask you. If you have just one word or a sentence that you want to give to women going through menopause, perimenopause, what would it be? And advice, anything from your heart womb?
Nature.
Nature.
Yeah, be in nature.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree, 100%. Yeah, I was actually thinking about how I miss the olive trees in Italy. Yeah, and when the sun comes up and the sun moves through the branches, it's always a peaceful, mystical experience too.
Yeah, and olive trees are amazing.
Yeah, they are. And, growing up in farms, both my grandparents had farms, both had olive trees, lots of them. And it's just those things that, now I remember, I remember the few images that come to me, how mystical that was. And I didn't realize at the time, because obviously
you don't, but you do later on. And those are the parts that feel larger than life, and they can really give you clues about who you are.
Yeah.
They really help you to know yourself.
Yeah. Oh,
so know thyself. So when you remember back to being a child and playing in the olive groves, or seeing violets, or smelling the scent of flowers and this, that, and the next thing, these are the places to take ourselves back to.
Yeah, and that's what I'm doing sometimes. Yeah, it's just the memory of climbing an olive tree when I was with my grandparents in the farm, or just I was tiny, horse riding on my my German Shepherd,
Yeah.
Just little things, and be dirty, like, covered in soil because I was rolling around, and my parents let me do that because I was a kid and I was supposed to do that, so let your kid do that.
I know, it's great. It's great. I mean, that's just the natural way of it, really. Close to nature. And I think it's really nice to remember these things that we did as a child and integrate those allow these memories to flow forward. And that can be part of the joy process, and it can be part of the grief process. It can be equally both joyful and griefful. So, these emotions can come forward, and they can surprise us with the intensity if we just let them, sort of come as a wave through us.
Yeah. Even like a simple memory, like, climbing on an olive tree can make me cry, and I don't understand at the moment why, but then I feel into the energy of that.
It doesn't matter whether we understand it or not. It
doesn't matter, exactly. Yeah.
Let it flow and just be an expression of life. Let it just be an expression of life.
Yeah, because people see me, look at me now, I'm quite girly, growing up, always like, lovely things and stuff, and so when I say, I used to climb trees and be very dirty because I was running around, with friends as well when I was at home or when I was in the countryside with my grandparents, and and I enjoy that and I miss that, and when I have the opportunity, if I could now go in the countryside and walk, I would do that because it's
Yes, well, I still do that, I have to say. I'm in the countryside a lot and I still get dirty. And actually, I do climb trees, maybe not for the same reasons, but and I still mess around with horses and I still mess around with pebbles. And I think going through menopause, allowing that childlike innocence to come back up again.
Yeah.
And the word innocence is, I think it's a special word really, because it can also mean inner sense. You know, the innocence of that childhood with the wisdom of the crone.
Yeah.
It's so joyful if we let it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Joy. Yeah. Yeah. That's another energy. Yeah. Anyway, so thank you so much. So we had a beautiful long conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. I know viewers are going to enjoy this too. And yeah, thank you. I really liked it.
Yeah, thank you so much to you and your viewers and all the other beautiful women who have talked to you. And this is just an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, it is. So coming together about menopause, it's always, yeah, I hope it's going to help others as well. Now, last question, no, it's not a question actually, but last thing, if you want to tell your viewers where they can find you if they want to, start working with us.
Yes, my main website is www.onehearttantra.com. That's all one word, and that's the best portal to get me through.
Perfect. So
Nice and simple.
thank you so much, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye.
Thank you then. Bye-bye.
Sacred woman I am, with bare feet I walk across the river's stones, water in my blood and the earth in my bones. I tend a fire in my heart so I am never alone. Sacred woman I am.